I'm Paul Llewellyn, and welcome to Rainmakers, where we share the stories of those making a difference in their communities. On today's show, we are joined by David Schwinghammer, the newly appointed National Program Director of ADRA Canada. With a deep passion for service and a vision to mobilize 500 churches across Canada in community engagement, David is leading efforts to make a tangible difference in the lives of those in need. From renovating community centers to launching community gardens and supporting migrant workers with essential resources, ADRA's initiative under the leadership are transforming lives. With a background in pastoral ministries and a heart for urban outreach, David's journey is one of faith, service, and a call to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Dave, welcome to Rainmakers.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be here today. Thank you.
So you recently became the National Director of ADRA, Adventist
Yep,
Development and Relief Agency.
that's right.
Can you share a bit about your journey leading up to this role?
So we have 2 hours, right?
Yes.
You know what? An amazing journey.
Mhm.
God called me originally to be a pastor. So I was in business and manufacturing for many, many years, and God said, you know what? I think it's time now. And so at the age of 28, God said, it's time to go back to school. And so he did. We went back to school. We started learning about pastoral ministry, and the Lord brought us to a two-church district. Incredible experience, Niagara Falls and St. Catharines, and we were thrown right into it, right out of school, undergrad to ministry, and then of course went back to school to learn some more and get experience some more and enjoy learning more about theology and different principles of the Bible, and then back out again. This time, God took us to a downtown church in the heart of a city where we got to experience what it was like to mingle with all different walks of life. It was incredible.
Mhm.
And then God said, you know what? I think I'm done there. It's about 2-3 years. I'm going to call you to the largest church in Canada.
Mhm.
and, and that's a whole other story for another time, but an incredible experience. And there, God got a hold of my attention in a way that he's never done before.
Mhm.
And we got to get out in the community. We got to do things in the community, build partnerships, build relationships. Long story short, from there, directors of a conference in stewardship and worship for 2 large conferences, vice president for administration, 2 large conferences. And then God called us to serve at ADRA Canada, the humanitarian agency of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Mhm. So you've had experience as a pastor and a director in different capacities. How have those roles shaped your approach to leadership in ADRA?
So first and foremost, being a pastor of a church, a shepherd, I quickly realized, it's interesting over the years, I tried to do my best to share gospel, to learn a gospel, to preach well, to connect theologically with members. But then I realized we are not doing a lot in the community. In my early years in ministry, we were trying to get the church healthy and trying to understand what life together meant and community in the church. And then I realized there's people that I get gas, I fuel up every week. I don't know their names.
Mhm.
There's people at the grocery store. I don't know their names. And as my journey in ministry continued in the local church, I realized my church isn't the only one. When I became administrator in the conference, I realized, and traveled to different churches, I realized, our churches are not, by and large, there's a lot of opportunity for us to get involved in the local church. And so
Mhm.
my passion has shifted, and I realized the last pastoral placement that I had, Paul, God allowed me the opportunity. I guess I'll just put it bluntly. I got tired of being the tail.
Mm.
In other words, I found ourselves, and I found a story of other churches where they would go to certain seminars or conferences and say, "Hey, we're going to do that. Let's just pull from there, and we can do that too, or let's pull from them. They're doing a great job. Let's do that." Nothing wrong with learning more. Always want to learn more. But if all you're doing is borrowing and all you're doing is and not applying, then the issue for us was we were trying to follow everybody else. We finally said, God really impressed me. He said, no, it's time that we become the head, and God has gifted us in the local church to impact the community for good.
Mhm.
And that transformation happened. I realized that we have an army. We
Mhm.
have an army of volunteers, an army of good-hearted people that love God, love people, and we just needed to get more and more involved. And God created that stirring within me to be a part of that movement.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. So you felt called to be a pastor, but specifically of a city. Can you tell us about that calling and how it influenced your work?
Oh, Paul, a most amazing story. It still to this day gives me shivers. Love telling this story. So we were pastoring a church here in Oshawa, Ontario, and we had two services. God was blessing. The ministry was going fast and furious. We had a lot of great things happening at the church. Oh, almost 900 in attendance, 850 to 900 in
Hmm.
attendance. And usually, as pastor, I was the last one to leave the building. And so, again, trying to find ways. We have 40 volunteers that serve at a community center. We have our own community center at that particular location. We were doing things in the community, but still, here's what happened. I went to Cuba on vacation, my wife and I,
Hmm.
and I'm sitting at the pool relaxing, and there's a young fellow there across from me, and we got talking, and he says, "Yeah, I'm from Oshawa." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And I said, whereabouts in Oshawa? And he gave me the address. I said, "You live there?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, down the street, I serve there. I'm the pastor of that church." He says, "There's not a church down there." I said, "There's literally a church down your street. It's one of the biggest churches in Oshawa." He says, "That's a church? I never even knew that."
Wow.
I'm talking to a young person living in our city who literally lives down the street and has never ever gone into our building.
Wow.
Wasn't even, we've been there 100 years.
Yeah.
And so God said, you know what? So that was percolating within me. That was, I just
Hmm.
had sleepless nights over that. I said, God, not the tail, God, not the tail. Let's be the head. God, what does that look like? And so here's what he did. Two services. I'm the last one to leave. And God, the elders came to me at the last service and they said, Pastor Dave, we have somebody picketing the church. I'm like, come on. So
Mm.
do people still do that? Picket the church? And so I thought, okay, I'll deal with it. We'll finish off the service, and we did. Had a wonderful service, powerful. God showed up, and as He always does, and had an incredible service. And I was exhausted. Got into my car, last one in the parking lot, drove up out of the driveway, and there he was, one gentleman holding a picket, walking back and forth across the street. So I said, you know what? I'm sure he's going to go. There's no other cars in the parking lot. I'm the last one. I'm sure he's going to go. And so I thought to myself, I'm just gonna drive past him, and I did. Didn't even look. Didn't even acknowledge him. Kept driving. And the Lord literally,
Mm.
Paul, He said, "Didn't I call you to be a pastor of this church? Aren't you supposed to be the pastor?" And oh, he said, "Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord."
Yeah.
So anyway, turned the car around and got out of my car, walked towards the gentleman, and I said, "Sir, what can I help you?" And he looked me in the eye, Paul, and he said, "I knew you'd come."
Mm.
And I said, "I'm sorry, have we met?" And he said, "No, we haven't met, but I knew you'd come. You're the pastor of the church, aren't you?" I said, "I am." I said, "Please, what is all this about?" And he began to unfold. He began to share some Bible text with me, and he says, in essence, what he said to me was, um, the Adventist church for far too long has been within its walls.
Wow.
And he said, the church, this city needs the church to step out of its walls. And of course, I agreed with him, same passion, and shared another verse or two. And then he said, "I want you to know that I have a message from the Lord for you." And I thought, well,
Hmm.
this is great. I mean, the gentleman's picketing across the road, and he's
Wow.
got a message from the Lord for me. I said,
Yeah.
okay, this is going to be good. Let me hear it, please. And he said, "You are no longer the pastor of the College Park Church." He said, and that took me back, and I thought, am I getting fired or something? Is this,
Yeah. Wow.
undercover boss or something? I didn't.
Yeah.
And he said, but you are no longer the pastor of the local church. You are now, God is calling you to be the pastor of the city.
Mm.
And I thought, at first I thought, I took it, I was exhausted, I wasn't really processing well.
Yeah.
And so I took it, I received it, and we had few other words, and that was it. And typical, Hollywood moment, got into the car, closed the door. I thought, did this really happen? Looked back and gone. So I don't know
Wow.
if it was an angel in disguise, or I don't know how to even explain what just happened. I went home, shared with my wife, and I shared with her what happened. And I said, yeah, I'm going to be the pastor of this. God's calling me to be pastor of the city. Of course I'm pastor of the city. And she looked at me and she said, so are you? I said,
Mm.
well, yeah. Yeah, we've got, yeah, we influence, and we got a lot of people around. We have 1,000 seats, and hey. And she said, but what would life look like? What would ministry look like if you were pastor of the city?
Wow.
And that started a whole. So I went back to the elders of the church. We had many elders in the church,
Yeah.
and I said, so folks, what would it mean if we were elders of the city. And I told him the story, and I said, not elders of the church, of course, but
Yeah.
elders of the city. And then we went to the children's ministries department and said, children's ministries department, what would happen if we would be children's ministries department of the city?
Wow.
And that created a whole incredible conversation. So, and I started. I said, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. And I started knocking on. The Lord impressed me. If I'm the pastor of the city, I got to act like one. And so I didn't know, there's no manual for this. So I started knocking on every single church in the city. You had 120 of them, knocking on every door, every single door. I drive up, I see a car, I'd knock on the door and I say, hi, my name is Dave. Can I come in for a minute and have a chat? And they would usually welcome me in, and I usually would be the pastor or ministry leader. And I said, this is who I am. This is our church down the street. Um, can I pray with you?
Mhm.
And they said, yeah, usually other churches don't come in here to pray with
Yeah.
me.
Wow.
And so I just started going door to door to door to door. And I say, you know what, your ministry matters here. It's an honor to do ministry together. And so I started doing that. I said, if I'm the pastor, that means I'm pastor of the city. That means shepherd of the city. So whoever's there, whatever brand or whatever you want to call it, I wanted to bless them in Jesus' name. And so I would minister to them. And then we decided one day that we would lead worship in the city. And that led to a whole range of events, Paul, that just to engage churches in the city to say it matters and that people's lives matter. And before long, we had thousands of youth gathering in the city at the airport. I was called in to pray over the youth of the city.
Wow.
God just kept
Wow.
opening up doors. So we went to the, I'm sorry if I'm a
Oh,
little bit long.
This is what we're here for.
So I had a bright idea. I said, you know what, we've got to get to the mayor. And so I invited all the big churches in the city. I said, you know what, we are influencers of a lot of people. God has called us to serve a lot of people, and we can impact our city for God. And so we got to bring God back into the city. And so we contacted the mayor at the time, and we met with the mayor, and we were ready for action. We were just said, Mr. Mayor, please, how can we bless you? Represent a lot of people. We want to make a difference in the city. And so we were just, our chests were a little bit puffed up more than they should have been. And, he responded back and he says, you know what, there's a guy in the four corners of the city. He's wearing an overcoat and a long beard. And we're like, oh, yeah. We see him quite a bit. He's down there every day. He's like, yeah, he's there every day. And we said, so did you want us to build shelters? Did you want us to build community centers? And we were just ready to, you want us to, we can take down a block and build a new, high rise for residential. What do you want us to do? He's like, no, guys, thank you. There's a guy downtown in an overcoat and a beard. Yes. But he said, what's his name? And we're like, yeah, we'll get his name, but we should probably build it. He said, no.
Yeah.
He said, please don't do the church, be the church. Wow. That just, so then there again, God was just opening up doors, and we decided that we started as pastors meeting together every single week. Every Thursday we met, sometimes for lunch, sometimes to pray together for God, to anoint the city, for God to have a release in the city. And ultimately, we wanted Jesus to be the center of our city. And so we decided, long story short, the downtown park we were not allowed to proselytize in the downtown park.
Yeah.
And so we prayed over that. And in the meantime, we were having citywide worship under the tent. That was an incredible experience. And God opened up a door where we were able to bring worship down to the downtown park. And that experience alone, how God just made that happen and brought us all together. I got there early in the morning, one of the events that we had down at the park, and I realized that there were vans of people down at the park even before we started, and I thought they double booked our event. And we had ministries of compassion there. We had ministries of hope, and we had tents all planned to line up. But before all of that happened, I wanted to go down there and prayer walk the park. Just ask the Lord to anoint this ground as holy ground. Whoever comes to this will find healing, will find help, will find hope. The church outside its walls gathering together, and all of a sudden these vans were coming to the park, and I thought, they double booked us. So eventually I thought I better find out what's going on here. So I went to talk to some of the folks there, and they said, yeah, no, there's an event happening here. I said, really? Tell me about it. Oh yeah, it's going to be a large gathering today. People are coming from all over the city. Roads are going to be blocked off, and yeah, we're going to celebrate Jesus today. I'm like, really? You too? What are you guys doing? It was our event. So
Yeah.
the churches in the community
Mhm.
were so engaged in this process, they sent their prayer warriors to prayer walk the park.
Yeah.
So there were van loads of people there to prayer walk the park. They were that impressed that God come back into the city, that people's lives will be changed and impacted. And this is the church. This is the church adding value to its community, caring for the lives of those around us outside of its walls.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible. So all that to say, um, that's such a powerful. I've seen and experienced myself
Yeah.
when we say this is God's city, and we're going to impact this city for good. We're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and I could go on and on and on with how we mobilize the church, how we engage the church, how others came along with us,
Yeah.
and there is nothing like it. There is nothing like it to see the church engage, rubbing shoulders with the community, creating impact for good.
Yeah.
Being the hands and feet of Jesus, and people just loving it. Nobody ever said, no, I don't want help. No, I don't want the church to do that. No, I don't want. It was always welcome. We were always welcomed. And
Wow.
we saw miracle after miracle, but just, yeah, I can't say enough.
Wow, that's incredible. That's just amazing, Dave. So one of your key goals is to mobilize 500 churches to engage in their communities.
Right.
What steps are you taking to make this happen?
Yeah, that's a tall order.
Yeah.
So with this in the background, having experienced what the Lord has given me, wow, what a gift. Just honored to have been able to experience that. We have 80,000 members, almost 80,000 members across Canada. And I know, I've seen, God has shown me
Mhm.
the potential, the opportunity we have if we were to step by step um, lean into that vision that our church is here to make disciples, to grow disciples for mission
Mhm.
in our backyard. And we have a responsibility around the world, and that's why I'm so excited about what we do at ADRA, 118 offices around the world, 20 million people impacted.
Yeah.
And I have the opportunity to now step into a national program where we have 500 churches, and in their community, we can be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so what are we doing? We're starting to put leadership, senior leadership in our conferences. We have 7 conferences around the country. We want to have representation and support and leadership in our conferences. And what we want to do for every conference of churches, we want to provide in every church, our goal is to have in every church an ADRA ambassador.
Mm.
And our ADRA ambassador will be trained, equipped, and certified so that they can mobilize the troops, mobilize the volunteers, train and organize work in the community, assess their communities, so that we're not just doing a program. We've done programs forever. We
Right.
don't just want to do something for the sake of doing it. We want to be strategic about it. We want to be intentional.
Mhm.
And we want to find out what the social needs are in the community. We want to find out what our resources are in the local churches, and then find out how we can match and what impact we can make in our local communities. So,
And going back to your other story, learn the names of the people in the community.
amen. Amen.
Not just to learn who
Absolutely.
we are,
No,
but for us to learn
no.
who they are.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
listen to their story, right?
Yes. Yes.
What their needs are. Just listen then and hear them. We have conferences right now that are deciding the first step in doing that is prayer walking. So they're saying before we do any assessments,
Yeah.
we're just going to go for a prayer walk. We're going to watch
Awesome.
people, we're going to watch groups, and we're going to pray with people. We're going to listen to their stories.
Yeah.
And from those relationships, we're going to determine how can we bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, gray hair now, but when I was in my 20s, I would go to a certain section of Toronto that I knew no church would work in.
Right.
And all I would do is just walk and pray because I
Yes.
didn't know what else to do.
Right.
But I walked and prayed. I prayed
Yes.
for people in front of me, prayed for people behind me. And that's what we need to do. Christians
Amen.
need to walk and
Amen.
pray.
Amen.
Uh, Dave, how does your faith influence the way you lead and serve through ADRA?
Wow. So I'm a worship leader at heart. I spent a lot of years, a lot of study in trying to understand and engage in worship. And that's been a very important part of my journey. My mother her journey in the Pentecostal church, grew up in the Pentecostal church. My dad grew up as an Adventist, and the two of them, Mom became an Adventist, but we had Spirit and Truth. We had a lot of that, growing up, and
Right.
so I'm very musical, and was a big part of that journey. And so I most of my Christian experience was I spent time in Romans chapter 12 that talked about, your whole body is a sacrifice.
That's right.
A sacrifice of praise, a sacrifice unto God. And I always wondered, what's that sacrifice? And so I go to Hebrews chapter 13, verse 15, and it said, let us give a sacrifice of praise with your lips. So I thought, there it is. Praise and worship leader. I go around teaching university and teaching in our seminaries and seminary and on this topic. And all along, Hebrews 13 verse 15, Hebrews 13 verse 15, praise and worship, giving God praise. And so whether it didn't matter if you're traditional or conservative, I got to be a worship director, in a conference of churches to just teach and model what that looked like, to engage people in worship.
Yeah.
And here's what God did. God did a pivot. He did a full circle turn. He said, Dave, don't forget verse 16. I said, yeah, of course, 16 is there, but 15, with praise with your lips, but don't forget verse 16, Hebrews 13, verse 16. And okay, let me look at it again. Oh, there's an and there. Don't forget, the sacrifice of praise, the fruit of our lips, and then he finished it for me. And don't forget to do good.
Wow.
For with such things, God is well pleased.
Amen.
And that's it's a full answer to what worship is.
Yeah.
It's not only with our mouth, with our talk. And
Yeah.
I realized, wow, for me in my Christian journey, I was so engaged in worship, but God was saying, that's not the only worship I want. I want you to be the hands and the feet. And so it informs my theology, it informs my Christian experience that I worship with my acts of kindness, with my actions. I want people to know, I don't even know your name, but boy, you act a lot like Jesus. And I long for those words to say, I don't even know who you are, because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But man, what you do is a lot like what I read about Jesus did. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate.
So I'm going to give you an opportunity here, Dave. What would you say to someone who wanted to make a difference in their community but doesn't know where to start? And I want you to speak to that person right now,
Okay.
who's does not know how to connect to their community. What would you tell them?
First thing I would say is pray. Pray, and God will show you. Exactly what He's calling you to. By the way, we're all called to ministry. We're all called, and you have a calling on your life. And connect with God in such a way to say, God, make that known to me, so that I can develop. I can use the gifts you've given to me for good. And then I would say, connect with the local community, with the local church community, and just let them know, I want to do something. What can we do? And your local church, every single local church, if they don't already, they will have a group that's interested or wanting to organize community engagement. There is nothing like getting involved in your community. So find a local church, talk to people in your community, get a group of people together and say, how can we make a difference here? Pray about it, put it before the altar, ask God what He can do through you, and expect. Don't just pray and leave it there. Get off your knees and expect God to do great things, because He will. Get yourself a journal, because you got to write this stuff down. You can't make this stuff up. God is wanting to do great things through you. Do it. Don't wait for somebody else. Don't wait for tomorrow. If you're thinking, how come nothing ever gets done? No. Now's the time to be part of the solution. We need you. We need you right now. We need all hands on deck. This is the greatest time in history to be a part of a movement where we get to make a difference and impact for others in the community. So God bless you. I can't wait to hear the stories across Canada. You can make a difference. God can use you. He's used me in a small way. He can use you in large ways. Our greatest days are ahead of us. Thank you for engaging in the mission. It makes all the difference together in mission. Yeah.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Pastor Dave, and I'm going to say Pastor Dave because in the early 2000s you were my pastor
Wow.
here at the
Wow.
College Park Church, and the amazing times. Our daughters are friends and
Yes.
went to school together and all that. But thank you so much for this interview on Rainmakers because this is what Rainmakers is all about. So thank you,
Thank
Dave.
you. Thank you, Paul.
Have you been moved by this impactful story and feel inspired to help us continue bringing these impactful moments to life? Your support is essential for us to keep showcasing the volunteers making a difference. If you'd like to contribute to the production of Hope Channel Canada and its ministries, it's simple. Visit agentsofhope.ca, where you'll find various ways to donate: debit, credit, Google Pay, Apple Pay, or send an e-transfer to Agents of Hope at hopetv.ca. Prefer mailing a check? Send it to Hope Channel at 1148 King Street East, Oshawa, Ontario, L1H1H8. For a more personal connection, call us at 1-855 4 HOPE-TV. That's 1-855 446 7388. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Hope Channel Canada, and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can also watch the show on multiple platforms: hopetv.ca, cable TV, the Roku app, and the Hope Channel app. Are you looking for answers to life's most profound questions? Hope Study provides free online Bible courses that cover essential topics, all at your own pace and from the comfort of your own home. One of our enriching courses, The Unlimited Power of Prayer, invites you to discover the remarkable world of prayer. Here, talking with God is not a boring routine, but a sincere conversation with the source of love and wisdom. This study will deepen your understanding of prayer's transformative power and help you build a stronger connection with God. Signing up is easy and completely free at hopestudy.ca. Begin your journey today and feel free to share this valuable resource with anyone else seeking answers. Uncover life's answers. Visit hopestudy.ca and begin your journey today.